Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Central Virginia fishing report with Ethan Martin at TaleTellers Fly Shop. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble, and I guess the good news is you can start to thaw out in Central Virginia again.
Yeah, finally. We're getting a little bit of green on our trees, and it warmed up a ton. I mean, February was more warm than what March has been, but it's been a pretty decent month of fishing, so I'm looking forward to a little bit more warmer weather, though.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, it's going to be almost in the 80s this weekend, and I guess if we kind of fast forward to the fishing, the musky bite on the fly is done, and so we really are talking about trout fishing. And I don't want you to get in trouble, but we are going to talk about pre-spawn smallmouth.
Yep. Well, that's this time of year.
Yeah. So what are you seeing on the trout streams?
Trout-wise, pretty much everybody that's been going out has been catching them. If you go out early in the morning, especially on these evenings or nights where it gets cold, you're probably going to have a little bit more tough time in the morning. But the bug activity is definitely there. We've seen some March Browns and Quill Gordons, that sort of stuff, all hatching off. So if you do head out and you've got a couple of March Brown style flies, because they've been eating dry flies pretty well, but there's still, I would say it's probably focused 70-30, 70% on the nymph and 30% on the dry. And that kind of fluctuates throughout the day. But definitely a good time to get out, especially if you can get out on some of these weekends where, like this one in particular, where you've got these two Thursday and Friday that are heating up. Saturday, even though it's overcast, that water temperature should be a little bit more warm, which will have fish even more active. So that's been good. I mean, brook trout, especially if you are a newer angler, this is a great time of the year to go and give them a shot because you don't have to worry about some of the stuff that people worry about in early summer, which is water gems and snakes and bugs and all that stuff. So basically, if you are straight up a newbie and you want to go and try your hand at it, this is one of the best times of the year, in my opinion, to go and give it a ring.
Yeah. So, I would think, purple hazes, parachute Adams. What do you like?
Both of those. There's some March Browns that I like too that are more of the traditional style tide. And I like those just because I feel like sometimes you want a fly that has a little bit more mass to it when the water is up a little bit, as it is right now. And so having a dry fly that's a little bit bigger or has like the actual hackle on it, not necessarily a parachute style fly. But when it lands, it just gives a little bit more oomph. And I think that does draw in some fish, especially in a environment like a small stream where you've got raging water and water. It's loud. It's a loud environment, and so having something that lands with a little bit more force is nice to draw attention when they are looking for these bigger bugs. Sometimes of the year when the water's low, it will spook them, but that is not this time of the year, thankfully. And even on some of the stock trout streams that guys have been fishing on, they've been using the same bugs, parachute Adams, elk hair caddis, March Browns, and still catching stockers on that. So maybe they think it's a giant pellet or something plopping on their head, but it's a fish on a dry fly. So
yeah, for sure. And that when you're talking, it makes me think about fishing humpies as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. A darker colored too right now.
Yeah.
And as things warm up, that's when we will start transferring over to a little bit more brighter colors. But still, right now, I trend towards patterns that are darker grays or that purple, the purple haze. Black can be a really good one. And so just a little bit more generic before I go full-fledged into the bright yellows and oranges, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And then, of course, we are, particularly with this little cold snap, I would imagine that if the folks know where to look for the fish, they're probably having pretty good luck fishing for smallmouth.
Yes, and that's everything. It's just knowing where to go and then also understanding that pre-spawn smallmouth are very moody and that you're not going to go out and just wade fish and catch 50. Like what people will assume that as the weather warms that it'll just be like late summer where you can go, wade downtown on the James and go catch, 15, 20, 30 smallmouth. And that is not typically this time of the year. It's typically going to be a grind, but the fish you catch are all bigger fish. So there have been people that have been doing that. It's mainly been a streamer or a sinking line game. I know a couple people that have wade fished in downtown Lynchburg as it has actually gotten wadeable, but it's just been cold still. And so you're not going to have the same amount of action. And most of those fish are still going to be near those overwinter holes, just because we did get a little cold snap and the bigger rivers did drop down in temperatures. So it was heating up quick. But then, a couple of those nights where it's either freezing or right around freezing, and that puts a damper on their appetite and metabolism pretty quickly. So it's one of those things where you've just got to put the time in. I mean, if you want to go and catch huge fish, this is a phenomenal time of the year to do it. But you've just got to really commit to it to make it happen.
Yeah, and to kind of help put a finer point on it for folks, what we're really talking about is, in the wintertime, we're talking about those deep, slow holes. And so, the pre-spawn guys are going to kind of be moving just out from there, right? And so that's the place to kind of go hunt. I mean, and the challenge, right, is on a river like the James, it's big. You really have to fish it a lot to know where those spots are.
Yes. And the other thing is you pretty much, to do it effectively and for an entire day, you pretty much have to have a boat. And so that's the thing that can be a blocking point for a lot of people, especially in being in a college town. People come, they don't necessarily have a jet boat or a raft or anything to go and do that with. And so, if wading is your only option, give it a go, but just know that it's the water that you are wading in is going to be typically more of an environment that those fish are going to be at in the summertime, which is, knee to hip deep water. And on the James, where you've got holes that are over 20 foot deep, that fish is going to be, like you said, closer to that deeper, slower moving water for safety, and also for, he can just sit there and kind of veg out and not have to fight any current and waste energy.
Yeah, it's interesting because thinking about downtown Lynchburg, I think most of that deep water is actually on the Amherst County side of the river.
Yeah, and there's a couple spots that are deeper that, like, I've caught fish in the wintertime, but it's just kind of few and far between, and you've got to almost put it on their nose for them to really, and just hit the perfect day where the bite opens up, which, again, I mean, smallmouth are famous for that. You go and fish for 3 hours this time of the year and you don't get a bite, and then all of a sudden you get like 2 or 3 in 15 to 30 minutes, and then it just goes back to nothing. And so if that's a moonrise, or if that's a front coming in, or whatever it is that triggers that response, it's just mainly you can't catch them when you're on the couch. That's it. I'm quoting Dakota there, so I'm sure he'll listen to this and appreciate that.
Yeah. And I guess too, I mean, is there any point in trying to maybe fish the mouth of Blackwater Creek downtown?
You could, for sure. I mean, any of those like smaller to medium sized rivers, if you want to wade for smallmouth, that is going to be the best option. The size may not be as big as what you're going to see on the James, but like some of those more, I would call them like medium sized rivers. Obviously, there's still smallmouth that are there. They don't all just disappear this time of year. And those streams are more wadeable. So if you're like, I can only wade and I have to go catch a smallmouth this weekend, then honestly, that's where I would put my attention towards, is some of those rivers like the Ty or the Peddler or the Piney on the lower side sections of them, and throw mainly streamers or things that are going to get down deep. And oftentimes those waters coincide with delayed harvest sections of streams, or sometimes it's just a stocked river. But a lot of times the smallmouth are going to be lower down, just focusing on trying to find that a little bit warmer water. And so that's where I would put my efforts if I were you. And it's tough because there's a lot of different rivers that are around here that you can go and try. It's just literally you have to pick one and you just have to go and see what happens. And eventually you'll start to put some puzzle pieces together. But like, even for myself, it's not something that I've done all of the time. I've done it, but like on those medium-sized rivers and wade fishing in winter, like a lot of times where I'll spend my time this time of the year is trout fishing or taking out the jet boat. So it's just one of those things. If you want to do it, then just know that maybe it's a hidden gem that not a lot of other people go and do. And so you're probably not going to see other people like you would if you go to a stock trout stream. But the fishing may not be as phenomenal. So yeah, it's definitely worth a shot though.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because we were talking before we started recording. We had a question from Brian and we kind of have answered it, but the question really is kind of right now. And he wanted to know when was the best time of the spring to fish for large smallmouth in the Shenandoah area. And I think, really it's about, go now until it starts getting really warm, right?
Yeah, that's honestly the biggest advice I could tell somebody is just, if you want to go, like if you want to catch a giant pre-spawn smallmouth, then you just have to go for them. You have to put it out of your head that you don't want to go catch trout, that you want to go catch a smallmouth, and then you have to just go and keep going because you don't necessarily know which day will be the trigger. You will know, patterns. So again, like if the river temps heat up, that obviously is going to increase metabolism and eventually spike feeding. Maybe not frenzy, but just they'll have an increased interest in feeding. And so, like, if you see that pattern, just like brook trout, if it's like 2 or 3 days in a row where it's warmer weather, typically always that third day is going to be a pretty good option, or any day thereafter. But the things you're going to fight is wind, which is super annoying this time of the year because you see 3 or 4 days in a row that are like, look really good, but then you also have like 20 to 50 mile per hour gusts of wind, which is just typical March and some, even April weather. And so it's one of those things, there's maybe a handful, if not like 3 or 4, like perfect dates in early spring. But a lot of times you've just got to go and grind it out and you'll be rewarded. I mean, that's the thing is, make no mistake, if you're fishing the Shenandoah, if you're fishing the James, if you're fishing the New, I mean, if you put your time in, you're going to catch a big smallmouth if you know what you're doing. I mean, if you have never smallmouth fished your entire life and you're like, this is what I'm going to start on, I might steer you away from it and just say, why don't you go catch trout right now until you, learn how to strip set or learn how to just straight up catch fish. But, if you want to kind of evolve your game and kind of get beyond what you are capable of, then this is a great time of the year because it is a different style of fishing than our smallmouth fishing is in the summer, which is typically going to be like a topwater or like intermediate line game. This time of the year, like I said, it is more streamer and kind of the bottom of the river is what you're fishing for. So it's a lot more slow in some ways. So of course, topwater fishing, a lot of times that's slow too. You just cast it out and let it sit there. But yeah, so it basically, when's the best time? The best time is now. And if you want to catch them, then you just got to go any day you're free until you start pegging stuff together.
Yeah, there you go. And, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or you can DM us on social media, whatever is easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag. We're going to enter a drawing for something cool from the shop at the end of the season. And, Ethan, before I let you go, I know you've still got some classes left in your kind of educational series and you want to let folks know hours and location and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So we've got a couple more Saturday classes coming up. Last week we had a fly fishing 101. But this week we've got a trip out. We're taking a group to Escataba. And then April 8th, Wesley Hodges is coming in and doing a spring smallmouth talk. So if that is a subject that you're interested in, then that is definitely a class to come to. But I will warn you in that the past 3 classes we've done have sold out. So if that's something you want to do, go to our website, which is just TaleTellersVA.com. And click on the calendar link. There will be a list of the options that we have going on in the shop. And just click on it and RSVP. And that's all you got to do. So the cost for the class is $20, which just goes to the guide. But it's been a good class. It's been a good class season, too. So we're kind of coming up on the end of that. We're going to stop doing those through the summertime. And in the style that we're doing, we're going to do a couple of on the water, on the river classes. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But yep. So downtown Lynchburg, if you're around, make sure to stop by.
Well, there you go. Well, listen, folks, this weekend's going to be awesome. You owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ethan.
Tight lines.